Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson and John Wilkerson.
Welcome to another round of the College Football X here on the OSG Sports Network, and we are officially in a no dilly, no dally zone because we have a title game to discuss, and to discuss said title game is one of the voices of the folks that are going to be involved in said title game. Keaton Gillogly, the play-by-play voice of the MSU Bobcats, dropping by for another go-around. Keaton, thanks for dropping by on the X. You're batting leadoff. You're our Ricky Henderson this week.
Yes, Ricky Henderson, one of the all-time greats. Rest in peace. He was one of the greatest men, one of the greatest ball players, and certainly one of the more memorable guys. So I'll take that. I'll take that for sure.
And let's see if we can. Let's serve up an easy one for you to hit a home run to bat leadoff. You got a title game coming up. I mean, you're like busier than busy. We are catching you in a hotel room in between basketball games before you hit the plane, before you go to Texas, before you call a college football game. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And then when we land on Tuesday, we've got our first basketball coaches show later that night. So, yeah, this is what we sign up for. These are some of my favorite weeks, and this is not the first time I've done this in my career, and frankly, not the first time I've done this this season. So, yeah, this is what happens when you get a little crossover.
When you're getting ready for this college football title game happening first thing that popped into my head, 1AA. I'm dating myself by saying
it's same thing.
FCS title game coming up, and everyone is talking about North Dakota State, Montana State, and I know that for folks who will be drifting in for the first time from a Montana State perspective, it is touchdown Tommy Mellott. What has it been like to see him and his game grow and evolve to where he is an unstoppable force in FCS?
Yeah, it's really rewarding. This level of football right now, and specifically these two programs, are really a throwback in a lot of ways. You know, both quarterbacks have stayed at the same place in the same system through coaching changes throughout their career. They have both grown and gotten better. They have gotten their games bigger, wider, deeper, and it's really this is what people really enjoy about college athletics, because these kids come in at the age of 18, and especially for Mellott during that 2021 run to the title game, losing to Cam Miller that year, even though Mellott got hurt after just 7 plays. But watching these guys grow up into men on the field, off the field as well, growing up within a system and just developing over these years. This is what it's all about. This is what people love college sports for, and I feel like we really get to see it right now, especially with these two programs.
Playoff run for you at Montana State, ranked number 1, beating UT Martin, the Skyhawks, by 32, knocking off Idaho by 33, ranked number 8 at the time, and then beating number 4 South Dakota by 14. Looking at that South Dakota game and looking at this run, what do you think Montana State has learned about itself in the postseason to get ready for possibly the first title win in decade?
Yeah, I don't know that this team is really learning much more about itself. It's really just about executing. This is a 24-player senior class that, it's a wide array from guys who are true seniors, a 4-year guy like a Simeon Woodard who had a big pass breakup to help clinch that game against South Dakota, one of the cornerbacks, to a 7-year guy in Cole Sane, who's the starting center and had to step in for the injured Justice Perkins in fall camp, and has done a beautiful job filling in that role. When you look at this senior class, they have been through, literally everything. They have experienced everything you could possibly experience at the collegiate level except winning a national championship, and they've got an opportunity to do that on Monday night. But they've been through the highs, they've been through the lows. They have lost to their rival, they have beaten their rival. They've had College Game Day come to Bozeman. They had the devastating overtime loss in the second round last year against North Dakota State at home. They have had semifinal games where they got outclassed in the trenches by both of the Dakota State schools, in 21 and in 22, and even if you go back to 2019 as well against this NDSU program. So they've kind of been through everything, and one of the superpowers of this team has been their lack of panic. So even when they do take a punch, because you're in a championship tournament, they know how to respond. They know how to take that mistake, not worry about it, wipe it clean, and get on to the next play. So we've seen them do this thing in a lot of different ways. Adam Jones with 4 rushing touchdowns against Idaho. Malott, his first 300-yard passing game against UT Martin. They gave up 2 big rushing touchdowns in the first half against South Dakota, and then the defense really locks down. They only give up 3 points after that for basically 3/4 of play. So, it hasn't really been so much about learning about themselves when you've played now 15 games. It's really about having the confidence to just execute the plan that they have, and that's kind of what we've seen now over the last couple of weeks.
What concerns you the most about this matchup, and what are you the most confident about in this matchup?
Yeah, I don't know that I have too many concerns in that I don't know that either of these teams have one massive advantage over the other, right? Like this isn't about, okay, how are you going to be better than them in this place or that place, or, they've got a really heavy advantage in this area of the game versus not. So for me, watching this game now, I'm excited to kind of sit back and just watch the way it plays out, because you've got 2 veteran quarterbacks who have shown big play, big play capability, who have shown the ability to go down and execute and orchestrate a game-winning drive. You got defenses that know how to make big plays. You got offensive lines on both sides who are really good, very experienced, very big. They're some of the best offensive lines in the country going against very deep defensive lines on both sides. So, I look at this game where it's 2 very evenly matched teams. You got a lot of veterans on both sides, and this is going to be one of those games where you get to just sit back, maybe relax, and just enjoy a couple of really quality programs and teams. You think about like some of the classic matchups at the NFL level, especially recently, your Josh Allen's versus Pat Mahomes type situations, or you go back to your Brady versus Manning's, like those were just matchups of 2 great teams, and at the end of the day, one of these 2 teams is going to come out with more points than the other, and it's not going to be because they were necessarily head and shoulders better than the other team. It's just who's going to execute, who's going to make the big play when they get the opportunity, and at the end of the day, one team's going to be celebrating and one team's going to be disappointed. But I think this is going to be just a true classic battle of 2 veteran teams that know what they need to do to win.
All right, so if you and I are doing the TV version of this, if we are doing if we're doing the Keaton Sports Network version, then you and I are in the booth, and then the music plays, maybe the pots and pans version from the NFL on CBS from the 80s or something, and then comes out title over wide. We're there at the game. Traditionally, it's record. We sit there, there's your beauty shot, then we get into players to watch. We know the players to watch, and you've done a great job of breaking that down for Montana State. Give me somebody second level that it would not be in your spot shadow off the top in a broadcast of players to focus on, but if this second level individual is doing well, then things are continuing to go well for Montana State.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, let me go. I'll go one offense, one defense. On the defensive side is Rylan Ort, right? Number 26. He's a 6th-year senior from Missoula. He missed the championship game in 2021 due to a suspension because of taking a banned substance, which was just an accident on a supplement, which has happened to people before. But he didn't play in that game. So he's hungry, and he's the safety. He's the guy who comes down for a lot of run fits. He's a big-time player. He has been one of the emotional leaders, and he is a guy who is just, he's a boomstick when it comes down in the safety position. So if you see Rylan Ort making some big plays on the defensive side out of the safety position, that's a really big one. On the offensive side, it's kind of an interesting one because it does kind of feel like I could throw out a few names, but I also feel like those are guys that would be on the big shadow board to start. But I'll go to Taco Dollar. He's another Montana kid. He's number 14. There could be an opportunity for a couple of punt return chances. He's an All-American punt returner this year. And on top of that, he has been Malott's number 1 option through the playoffs. Now, part of that has been the tight end / fullback Rohan Jones, who's been banged up. He did get back in the semifinal game, so I would assume that he's going to be feeling pretty good for this game now and kind of be fully back to 100%. But, for Taco Dollar in the playoffs, 11 catches, 180 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. He's got 10 touchdown catches this year. He's not a big dude. He's one of the more kind of slot guys, or you can kind of put him out in the flat and throw a screen to him and let him do his stuff. But he's a little water bug who knows how to slice his way through some of these guys. So, if Taco Dollar's having a big game, he caught the first touchdown pass of the game in the semifinal contest against South Dakota, then the Bobcats are going to feel good about things. So I'll go with Taco Dollar and Rylan Ort as 2 of the maybe second second level guys that people aren't totally thinking about.
And I just like hearing you say Taco Dowler for obvious reasons, because it's lunchtime as you and I are talking, and I'm getting pretty hungry. To me, it seems like Taco's a guy that gets lost in traffic a lot. Being 5'9", 175, it's like, yeah, he's over there, not a focus. But then all of a sudden, it's like, oh-ish, Taco's done it again. Am I right?
Yeah, he's just really fast, really is what it comes down to, and he's a backyard football type guy. It was fun talking to him for one of our radio shows earlier in the year where, we were just talking about some of the punt return stuff. He's been really steady, and even beyond the 3 punt return touchdowns he has in his career, when it really comes down to punt returning, one of the things people maybe don't think about a ton is that it's really sometimes it's just about catching the football. If you catch the football at the 25-yard line, instead of letting it go over your head, bouncing at the 25 and rolling down, you can save 10, 15 yards of field position by just catching the football and making that decision correctly. It doesn't have to be a big return. And sometimes it is a catch and a 5-yard return. And that makes a difference. That could be a 20-yard difference, That can be the difference between starting at the 40 versus the 20. That's a huge difference when you're looking at what you can do offensively, especially for the top offense in the country like Montana State is, averaging over 40 points a game. So I think that's one of the big parts of it is just he's very relaxed. He enjoys it. He feels like he's at his best when he's just feels like he's playing in the backyard, and that's what he kind of does in the punt return game too. So yeah, it's elite speed, and it's really good decision making when it comes to fielding some of those punts.
All right, cut the promo for me for those that want to listen to your call and find out what's going on from the MSU side of things. How do they do it?
Yeah, let's see. So we've got our entire radio network, which I usually put out on all of my socials. So if you haven't found that, you can just scroll back on the timeline and find that for people who are in the state of Montana. We cover basically everything around the state. So if you want that there, the Varsity Network app is how you can get it on the internet or on your phone through the app, and you can listen to that. We will be on Behind the Mic as well. So we'll have our YouTube feed. If you go to the Montana State Athletics YouTube feed, we got the mic in the booth, and you can catch all the wild action that goes on in there because it does get a little hype and a little heat, and there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown at you that you don't always hear while you're on the air. We got our latest podcast out, the Bobcat Insider Podcast, and we've got the Bobcat Insider Television show out already with myself, Grace Lawrence, Brent Vegan, and Drew Polidor, who's a Texas native, one of the safeties. So we've got a lot of content out, and hey, if you want to listen to some hoops on Saturday afternoon, we got that too. We might sneak a little Frisco talk in there also.
As always, my friend, great to see you. Great to hear about what's going on up there, and safe travels on multiple fronts getting down to Texas. And I know that the entire MSU community is going to be down there for the title game there in FCS. As always, my friend, thanks for dropping by the X. We'll catch up with you soon.
Hey, you got it. Happy to be here.
And we're going to talk FBS after the commercial break. It's the OSG Sports Radio Network and the OSG Sports College Football X. More after this.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our X page, formerly known as Twitter, at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever is on your mind about college football. Now back to the College Football X. Here's John Wilkerson.
We hope you're catching our podcast on our host network, Spreaker, as well as Spotify, iHeart.com, Apple Podcasts. We'd love to hear from you on our X, formerly known as Twitter account, and Facebook. And now OSG, John, OSG Sports now is on Instagram and TikTok. And so we want to hear from you on those platforms as well.
Scary, scary, scary. The kids on the TikTok, the IG, the Insta, or the Gram, I'm intimidated, so I don't know what to think.
Now to go to matters at hand here. A first-round bye means nothing in the college football playoff.
Nothing.
We've determined that in the first year of the college football playoff.
See, but you're speaking in generalities and thinking that they're absolutes. Look, this year, okay, fine. The 5, the 6, the 7, and the 8 all make it through. Okay, great, fine, yeah, great, fine, cool. But you're coming out of the blocks by saying that because you rest, if you're the 1, the 2, the 3, or the 4, that it's irrelevant. It's like the empirical evidence for you is like an absolute after like one round and 1 year. It's like you don't want to wait for any kind of couple of years of empirical evidence and things that are assembled and you look at trends. It's like, nope, 1 year and this is it. I see how you're working. I get this now.
How I'm working. It's just what I'm observing.
What? But
for
you're
this
saying
year.
but you're saying that 1 year means that it should never be like this ever again.
No. Remember, I wanted to evaluate how the neutral site games would play out after you had a first round at campus sites,
Yeah.
which we all agree was amazing to see. Those type of college football games in late December, where the elements come into play. It had a little bit of an NFL playoff kind of feel to it. And we were curious, okay, how is it going to play when you go to the neutral sites? And well, we see that the neutral sites, it's cool. It's still the bowl games. I get it. And I get it that they have heavy money behind them with the sponsorships. I'll get it. And I'm a college football tradition guy, and I'd like to see the bowls keep going as well. Yeah. However, if we're going to go playoff route, and that is now the way to settle a national champion in major college football, I guess we're going to have to be a little open-minded about this and maybe give it a 5-year study of some kind to determine does a regular season still mean something? Does a conference championship mean something if you don't get some kind of benefit in the playoff, i.e. hosting a playoff game?
Well, if you're Ole Miss, apparently it doesn't, because Lane Kiffin sits there and says, well, with 3 losses, we should have been in the college football playoff.
They probably should have.
Oh, they should not have. Child, please. Who did you lose to? You lose to Kentucky? You lose to Florida? No, you don't know. No, you do not deserve to be in the college football playoff. I'm sorry. That doesn't happen.
But my point is, think about, I'm going to use a Rose Bowl example because it was a rematch, and I think Ohio State was definitely out for a scalp in that game. And they probably, if this game was played in Austin, they would have won it, in my opinion. But at least Oregon would have had a fighting chance with their home crowd behind them, and maybe the temperature it really doesn't matter for Ohio State if the temperature is in the low 30s. But you get what I mean.
Oh yeah, I do. But the way that the way that it's currently structured, the answer to that is no. You won the benefit by being a top 4 seed. You won the benefit of being in a neutral site bowl game. That's just how it is. And I know that Greg Sankey wasn't a fan of the current structure the way that it was, and wanted to try to get it flipped and turned. And I don't know if he was laughed at per se, but he had the finger wagged at him, and it's like, no, Mr. Commissioner, that is not going to happen. We are not going to change and flip things around. So right now, as things stand, and we all know that year one of anything is always reason for change, or at least reason for analysis. That do you flip things around, and do you? But I don't think that you're going to want to sit there and say, okay, if we give the home games later in the calendar, then does that mean that the Rose Bowl is in Autzen? No, it doesn't mean that.
No.
What do you do then with the current bowls as they are? That we're used to seeing right there in January.
Yeah, I totally get that, but there's got to be a point where you got to be committed to a playoff structure, or is it going to work putting the bowls in and have some kind of reward for a team that was ranked number 1 throughout the polling, or won a conference championship and is definitely the best team in the country on paper with the eye test. There's got to be some kind of reward for a team for the success they've had during the regular season, or a conference championship. And if you're going to have 4 major college conferences, and you're going to allow a group of 5 team to join the party and even get a bye, I mean, let's think about how we can reward these teams for their conference championships and getting in a playoff. There's got to be something there for them to be able to have the success and show for it in the regular season.
Would you have, in your version of bowl reality, would you have then given the 4 to the ACC and then given Boise the 5, considering that I think that Boise was a better team.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Boise was the better team. They had the early season matchup with Oregon and actually played well against Oregon. And they had a marketable star in Ashton Jeanty and an intriguing team as well. And they took care of business. I mean, look, I'm not going to go into comparisons here with the 4 Power 4 leagues and the Group of 5 leagues. But again, I mean, let's look at Boise State here. They played Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl down in Glendale, Arizona, and it didn't really go well for the Broncos. And think if they were hosting that game on the Smurf turf.
Well, but
that would have, you had the intrigue of a Penn State team, a traditional power going into a program that's up and coming, or however you want to term them, kind of like a Gonzaga in men's basketball. To me, that would have been intriguing. To me, that would have probably given Boise maybe a couple of touchdowns with the home crowd behind them. And there have been a sizable crowd from Penn State there. Look, I understand bowl sponsorships. I get all this. I'm just saying there's got to be some kind of value for a team like a Boise State who played their schedule, played well against Oregon, but had to go to a neutral site.
But
and think of Oregon too. They have to go to a neutral site at the Rose Bowl against a team that is just a juggernaut right now in Ohio State.
But if you're Boise and you're still not finishing your chances that you had early in the game against Penn State, to me, if you're playing on the Smurf turf in Boise, or if you're playing in the Fiesta Bowl, if you're not finishing your chances, you're not finishing your chances. I don't care where you are when it comes to playing a game. If you're not getting that key conversion, if you're not, kicking field goals, if you're not getting touchdowns, doesn't matter where you are. If you're not putting points on the board, you're not putting points on the board. You're extrapolating the notion that if they were to have played this game on the Smurf turf in Boise, which, do not get me wrong, I would have loved to have seen, but the extrapolating of the logic that they would have finished their chances that they didn't finish, that they would have had a better blocking in between the tackles for Ashton Jeanty to spring and get longer gains, you're extrapolating the notion that would have happened in Boise versus it happening in Tempe or in Glendale. That it's like it's game plan is game plan to me here. It doesn't matter where it's being played. So don't run between the tackles if you're Boise. And if you're not running between the tackles, don't do that on the Smurf turf. Don't do it in Tempe. Get your passing game going and make your conversions, and then you put points on the board and have a better chance to go up against Penn State here. It's like the game plan and the venue are two different things to me.
Well, there are two things in college football that are extremely valuable: home field advantage and momentum. And the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive at times during a college football game. And that's just my point. Being able to play at home and have a reward for a great season, at least one home game for a playoff, I think would be a fair way. And I hate saying a fair way because everybody has their own concept of a fair way of how things should be in the college football playoff. But I just think there needs to be some kind of value for a program who does everything. They play their schedule. They win. Perhaps they won by double digits all but one game. Who knows? I just think there needs to be some kind of value system for those kind of things. A conference championship. Those have got to be addressed and thought of as well.
So then let me present to you this scenario, and I know that this only works, I guess, with this particular team. Would you have then converted the Idaho Potato Bowl to an opening round game for Boise to give them that home game that you're looking for, and had the bowl game that they would have been in, the New Year's Bowl, a little further down the schedule to do something else? Would that have been your semifinal spot and then give Boise the home game by turning it into that particular element of this? What are you staring at here?
Yeah,
I
I guess with the benefit of having a bowl game, you're hosting a bowl game, maybe that would work, but it wouldn't work in all scenarios.
right.
So I don't see that as an option. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here, besides having some kind of value for a team during the regular season, they had a great regular season, and rewarding them with a home playoff game in a particular round. I think the point I'm trying to make is if we're going to make a commitment to college football playoff, let's study to see if the bowl concept works, and let's give it 5 years. Everybody has a 5-year plan, right?
Unless you're portaling, and then you'll have bowl.
Yeah, and then you got a 6-month plan.
Bowl games will portal too, yeah.
But where's the commitment going to be? I understand college football is a traditional sport. We all love it for that. And I hate to see it go as well, but we've started this playoff. And after 5 years, do we need to commit to a playoff format, much like the NFL, how it works? I mean, everybody watches the NFL playoffs, even the casual fan, and it's great theater. Does college football need to look into that, or keep it? What makes them unique is having the bowl structure and having the Cotton Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl and the Rose Bowl, Fiesta, all these great bowl games that have great tradition alive. I think that's where we're going to have that crossroads is going to happen on that next few years. So that's kind of how I look at it. But
keep the bowl games the bowl games. Keep bowl season. And by the way,
what's been cool about this playoff and with this scenario we've got now is your top seed's a number 5. And so you've had the upset factor somewhat in this playoff. And, I was thinking about, we've been comparing the college football playoff to the NCAA tournament. Just think if all the number 1 seeds and possibly the number 2 seeds were eliminated after the Sweet 16. I mean, that's kind of what we have here.
Oh, well, I mean, look, stuff ish happens, man. I mean, you have all of these games, and you end up with teams that don't convert chances. You end up with Arizona State and Texas. It was a slow start for Arizona State. They shook it off. They took it to overtime. Your 4-5 ends up being the game that was probably the most nerve-wracking to watch across the board. And Ohio State and Oregon over early. And how many Rose Bowl games have been over early in the past?
Not many.
Boise and Penn State. Boise didn't convert any early chances. Penn State took advantage of it. And Boise found some room with the passing game early on, but I think that everybody and their mother knew, okay, key on the running game and Ashton Genty and make sure that he would not get the yardage that he was hunting for. Then, obviously in the Sugar Bowl, Georgia did not have their starting quarterback. It was the first game out of the blocks for Gunnar Stockton in that offense. And the game plan for Notre Dame, once again, make the passing game beat you. You key on Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne did, I think at one point was averaging less than 4 yards a carry. I think it was, I want to say it was 15 for 38 at one point in the game. Make the new quarterback beat you. And by the end of it all, it was found out that, the game plan was not there for the University of Georgia. Notre Dame's defense was stout, and you end up with the 5, the 6, the 7, and the 8 making their way through. Yes, you end up with blue bloods, but no, none of the top 4 seeds made it through, even if you had an exciting game that went to overtime and you had, 2 blowouts, a game that went to OT, and a frustrating game for a team with a backup quarterback. So, I mean, you have all of these intangibles, and Jimmy the Greek probably should be wandering into our segment here at some point to discuss what was going on. But you end up with the 5 through the 8, and that's what happens, man. Playoffs do. You end up with bracket like in the women in the basketball tournament, the one in March and April. there's always that one bracket where you end up with chaos and you end up with a 12 and a 13 making it through. You always end up, it's not the 6 and the 11 makes it through, the 5, 12, the 12 makes it through. You might have a 13 or a 14 make it through. There's always that one bracket that's that way, and you ended up with that happening in this particular round of the CFP. I don't anticipate it happening this way all the time in the CFP going forward. 5 years of analysis will see this through, and so when we continue to do the X in 5 years, we'll have our empirical evidence. But I think that I'm chalking it up to all of the external factors that we saw to get the 5, the 6, the 7, and the 8 through here.
After that Texas-Arizona State game, Texas fans needed a couple of shots to calm their nerves, and Arizona State needed a couple of shots to drown their sorrows in. What a game that was. And a couple of thoughts of mine. Drew Aller probably played his best game of the year against Boise State. Yes, Boise didn't take advantage of some of the field position they had and didn't capitalize on scoring opportunities, but and Penn State prevailed. Ohio State was out for blood and they got it. And look, I didn't think Gunnar Stockton played that bad of a game. I just think his receivers let him down.
Oh, absolutely.
And Notre Dame, look, that defense is good as advertised, and they shut down pretty much Georgia's running game. And so you've got Texas, Ohio State at the Cotton Bowl, and Penn State and Notre Dame at the Orange Bowl. We'll talk about those games in our next edition of the College Football X.